I'm going to hit record. My computer is taking a little moment. In its defense, I am asking it to do a whole lot of things. So hopefully you can see my video. If you can't, will you please put it in the Q&A or in the chat, because I can't see my video, which is kind of nice, but a little entertaining nevertheless. So the chat and the Q&A box are both open. It seems that I am not muted, and it seems that my camera is going, but I can't see it. I'm going to try one thing here real quick. I don't see. I hope you guys can see. Again, let me know. You can't see me. How exciting is that? You know what it might be, guys? I put this into the Facebook group, and I'm wondering if I can't do that. I might have to make a hard choice. Hey, Jennifer, I see you're in Facebook. You may have to go over to the YouTube, and Facebook, you may have to join me on YouTube. You can see and hear me. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to come off of the Facebook, go to the Delane MD channel on YouTube, and you should be able to find me there. I'm going to end this on Facebook because I think it hijacked my camera. All right. Hi, guys. Can you see me now? Hopefully y'all can. I can see me now. Not that I need to see me, but it seems to make sense that y'all can see me. So it says the recording's paused. So I'm going to go ahead and hit for record. Yeah, it wouldn't let me record. How exciting is that? So I can't do both in the Facebook group and in YouTube. I thought I was pushing my luck with technology this morning, but you know, the fact that it's all the folks are here and it's all working well is a, you know, Christmas miracle in and of itself. All right, guys. So we are going to talk today about how to stop once you've started eating. Kind of, most women understand this on some level. It's kind of that idea of eating behind your back, like you know what it means, even when maybe you can't like describe it, but you know what I mean. How do you stop when you start, and how, you know, what it looks like to eat behind our back? Most of us understand what that means, even though there's not maybe a clear definition of it. I am going to share my screen. I can see that the Q&A and the chat is working. So make sure you put any questions or anything that you need in there. So I'm glad you're taking some time to take care of yourself today, to be here, to learn some things so that you can start getting on top of some of these things that maybe hinder the health goals that you have. I hope this is the thing that you're doing for you today. I hope this is, you know, sometimes it's helpful to define what it is. What is that thing that you're doing? So I hope this is it. We are going to dive right on in, and hopefully you can see my slides and there's no problems there. We're going to dive on into what it means to stop once you start. We're going to talk about that for a while. We're going to talk about how it leads to problems for you and maybe your insulin resistance and your diabetes. We're going to talk about how this shows up in your life, like the thoughts, the stories, the things that you're feeling, like the things that you're going to see this. Like sometimes it's not, I can't stop once I start. Sometimes that's not the thought that you're having in your brain. There's usually, like, that may be afterwards, but there's usually something beforehand. We're going to talk about what those thoughts might be. And I certainly want to know if like there's something else that you experience and it looks a little different to you. If we need to unpack any of that. We're going to talk about the difference between our feelings, our emotions, and sensations, because that is kind of at the heart of how do we stop once we start. And then we're going to discuss some ways that we can kind of sharpen the distinction between the things that I think, the things that I feel, and then the things that I sense in my body. Nene, has a question about protein powder and intermittent fasting, and I will make sure that I get to that by the end of the discussion today. There should be plenty of time. So what do I mean about stopping once you start? Lots of times we find that at the end of a long fast, maybe we fasted for 24 or 30 hours, we struggle, like once we start to eat, to stop eating. That's a skill that most of us find we have to really, really hone and get real clear on to develop that skill. The other times that we see this, like maybe it's time to eat, it's time for lunch, it's time for dinner, it's time to eat. And there's this kind of excitement and anticipation that goes along with it that that leads to kind of this out of control eating, this kind of chaos almost. Or maybe it's after dinner, right? Like I've had dinner and then maybe my spouse starts to nibble on food, or maybe there's just this feeling of a little bit more. Like that's the thought. I want a little bit more. Now, all of this is very ironic for most of us because, like, if you've done a 30-hour fast and suddenly you can't find another 5 minutes of quote unquote willpower or of self-discipline in order for us to not overeat, right? Or like you've had a great day, you're really like felt calm and felt entirely, in control of what you were doing. And then suddenly it's dinner time and we lose our marbles and we can't seem to exhibit that control again. And it's the same whether it's dinner time, whether it's after dinner, whatever it is. Like if you're watching your spouse nibble on popcorn or chips or ice cream after dinner, but you've managed to watch other humans eat all day long, but suddenly after dinner, you're having this hard time. That is an element of that's what we're talking about. Like, how do we stop eating once it's time to start? A lot of times this is driven by excitement, by anticipation. There is a chaos or an out of controlness that most of us are aware of. We've all kind of had this feeling of it's time to eat, it's time to start, and now I feel like I don't have any control when I've had control for the, up until now without any issues. So, that is what we're talking about. If this shows up for anybody else differently, make sure you put that in the chat. If it's not, at the end of a fast, if it's not when it's time to eat that you're having this, how do I stop? If it's not after dinner or after a meal that you're having a hard time with that stuff, if it's somewhere else that you're having a hard time stopping, make sure you put it into the chat so I can address anything that might be specific to you. So the reason that this not stopping component is a problem is it blocks us from getting the results that we want. Increasing the amount of food that you eat does two things. It increases the amount of insulin that will be released in the process, or overall the amount of insulin that will be released. And it also slows the transit time through the gut, right? There's only so much food per unit of time. So many grams of food per unit of time that your gut can manage. Like there's only so much processing that machine of your gut can do. And the more food you put in, frequently that means that it's just going to process longer, which means you're going to have more insulin produced over that period of time. Okay. So this meets the two criteria for developing insulin resistance, right? High concentrations, meaning you're getting more of a concentration of insulin and you're spreading it out over a prolonged period of time. So this leads to increased insulin and, of course, insulin resistance. That's part of the problem. Some of the problem is also that we have overconsumption, right? Like there's this overconsumption, which leads to increased weight. Increased adipose tissue leads to increased inflammation. Most women that I work with find they want to lose weight and they want to normalize their insulin function. They want to reverse their diabetes. They want to have better blood sugars. So when we overeat, we're adding to both of those problems. We're increasing the insulin produced and we're storing that extra energy that we just consumed in the form of overeating. We're storing that as extra adipose, and that adipose can lead to an issue, right? Like, one, it keeps us from our goals, but two, extra adipose on our body leads to inflammation, which can lead to more insulin, right? So it's really this overconsumption of food, this overeating of food really works against us in a couple of different ways. In addition to the biology of this, right? And it's not like what happens in our brain isn't biology, it's still biology. But when we are insulin resistant, when we are consuming foods and overeating as a behavior, that behavior leads to insulin resistance, and it also leads to us seeking out dopamine as a reward. Okay. So what this causes in our brain is a couple of things. One, insulin resistance decreases the signal to our brain that we are full and satisfied and we can stop eating. 10,000 years ago, consuming food and acquiring food and hunting and gathering was a energy, a sink, like, right? We had to put energy in to consume the energy. So we had to have a way of only consuming, of only hunting and gathering, of only expending that energy if you actually needed the energy. So the human body actually has a system to, when there's adipose on your body, those adipose cells, they make a hormone. It's called leptin, and it goes to your brain and it says, hey, listen, we've got energy. We don't need any more energy. We've got energy stored. There's no need to take the risk. There's no need to spend the energy to go out and get more food because we've got plenty of energy stored on our bodies. When we are insulin resistant, so when we have overeaten to the point that we have too much insulin in our system, we're insulin resistant, and we have this extra adipose on our body, that combination shuts down our brain's ability. Like, our brain becomes leptin resistant. We're no longer hearing the message from the adipose that we have plenty of energy and there's no need to continue to hunt and gather. The signal to our brain that tells us we're satisfied gets shut down. So now we're just seeking out more food and more food and more food and more food and more food. Okay. We never hear the message from our body because we're leptin resistant. We never hear that message that we are satisfied. Okay. Increased food leads to this. Increasing that food also leads to increased dopamine release in our brain, which makes us feel good, which makes us want to eat more food so that we can feel good, and we get in that cycle. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So there are a few things that happen here that really can cause, like, lead to the problem, the quote unquote problem with this overeating. It's really, really important to learn if we are going to live naturally healthy lives, if we are going to live lives where we have normal biology occurring in our body, we have got to stop this overeating component. So thoughts that lead to overeating, they're varied. Like, there's a lot of different stories or thoughts that run around in our brain that makes us want to continue to eat, right? Or makes us want to overeat. It leads to this feeling of wanting more, right? I'm starving after work. This is one of the biggest times, and we've all been there, right? Like, we're going to make dinner. It's time for dinner. It's after work. It's the end of a long day. We're standing in our pantry. We grab a bag of chips or a sleeve of Ritz crackers or a bag of nuts or some cookies, and we start munching them as we're considering what we're going to make for dinner, because we can't possibly wait one more moment, right? Like, that's clearly not about hunger. That is something about what's happening in our brain, right? And sometimes it sounds like I'm starving after work. And sometimes there is truly a physical hunger there. But there's not going to be then a physical hunger when it's time for dinner because we just munched on a sleeve of Ritz or, potato chips or cookies, Girl Scout cookies, whatever it might be. Okay. So thoughts like I'm starving after work will lead us to do this overeating, this, like, I can't stop eating once I've started thing. I want to add a little bit more or just a little more to my meal. Like, that thought, I want to add just a bit, just a little bit. That will lead us to not being able to stop once we've started eating. I don't do it all the time, so this time is fine. That's another thought that leads us to continue to consume after we've started, like we've had our meal, we've eaten our meal, and we've consumed that. These are the thoughts that kind of keep us eating. It's okay to add this snack because it's still like eating time. Like it's okay for me to add a little bit more to my dinner because it's already my eating window. Thoughts like I'm full, but I didn't get that special thing that I said I could eat. I knew I could have some fruit, maybe a couple pieces of dark chocolate, whatever it might be. Like I said that was okay, but I'm still full, but I'm going to go ahead and keep eating, right? Because I said I can eat that. All of these lead to us having a hard time stopping after we've started eating. This bite doesn't count. That's a story we tell ourselves. I need a little crunch. I just want to taste this thing. Maybe this one bite will slide right on through unnoticed. It won't cause my sugars to spike and it won't cause my weight, loss to stall out. I want to eat normal like everyone else. My husband keeps eating. My spouse keeps eating. My friends at this dinner party, they keep eating after their meal is gone. I want to eat like they do. Or this one bite, what's it going to hurt, right? These are these stories, the thoughts in our brain that happen that keep us munching on things, okay? That keep us overeating, that make it really hard to stop eating once we've started eating. So at the heart of this, of how we stop doing this, is determining a feeling versus a sensation. All of those thoughts that I just gave lead to a feeling that occurs in our body that is permissive, that is allowable, that is going to tolerate doing something. And there's a lot of things that go into that thought, a lot of different feelings that go into that thought, like hope. I hope that I can do this and it not show up, it not, be reflected in my blood sugar or on my scale. This kind of almost is bamboozling is what we call it in the group. Like, I'm sure like this bite won't matter. We all know the bite's going to matter. We all know that that's not true, that a bite always matters. But we believe for a moment, we allow ourselves to bamboozle ourselves for a moment that that bite won't matter. These are all feelings. What are feelings? Like we have feelings versus sensations, and we're going to dive into what the difference is there. Sorry, I want to make sure I had everything. I said everything that I wanted to say with that slide. We all have feelings and we all have sensations. We are not taught the difference between those two things very well in our society, in our culture. We are not taught the difference between these. Feelings are vibrations in our body. They're just vibrations that occur in our body. They do not harm us. They cannot do anything to us. They are not indicative of harm. They are not indicative of, soothing. Like they are just vibrations in our body. They tell us information about the experience we are having. I've spoken about this a lot in the past, how our brain is a prediction machine. That's what it does. It predicts what's going to happen. That prediction that our brain has about what may or may not happen is relayed to our body in this vibration that we call a feeling. And then we know what our brain is trying to tell us and predict about a situation based on this feeling, this sensation, or I'm sorry, this feeling, this vibration in our body. Okay. Feelings are words that we typically will describe as a sentence, right? Like if I ask you how you're feeling, like I'm walking into a restaurant. This was something I put on social media, an Instagram post today. Like I want to feel confident when I walk into a restaurant that I'm going to eat what I want to eat. And I'm like, tell me what confidence feels like. It feels like I know what I'm going to do. Like that's how women describe a feeling. A feeling should be a one-word thing. If you're using an entire sentence, a verb and a noun combination in your brain, if that's what you're telling yourself a feeling is, that is a thought that you're having about something, okay? Our brain predicts what's going to happen, and it comes in our brain as a thought, and that's a sentence, but your brain relays that thought to your physical body in the form of a feeling. And that is a vibration in our body, which often when I'm asking women in the group, like, how do you feel? I'll be like, what is the vibration? Is it a high frequency? Is it super fast? Is it slower and more gentler? Like, what is the feeling? What's the vibration? What's the frequency in your body? That's a feeling. Okay. If when you ask your brain, like when you're like, hey, what are we feeling here? And you're sitting at the pantry and you're trying to figure out what's for dinner. And you say, what are we feeling here? And your brain's like, I feel like I'm going to starve to death right now. That is a thought. The feeling that you're having in your body is likely urgency or irritability or fear. I'm going to starve to death if I don't eat something right now. There's an urgency, a fast moving vibration in your body associated with that. What do you call that fast moving vibration? Where is that fast moving vibration? Urgency for me is always in my chest and my upper abdomen. Satisfaction, like satiety, like when I am satisfied. And again, some feelings overlap sensations, and that's what we're going to talk about next. What is a sensation versus a feeling? But certain, like the feeling of being satisfied, that is a feeling. It's something that comes from my brain, right? I can be satisfied with a meal that I cooked, and I can be satisfied with a job that I did, right? There is no sensory organ that's telling me about that satisfaction, about my belief that it's adequate, right? But that for me is typically in my throat, in the back of my throat. Then there are feelings like mortification, right? Like embarrassment. Like if you got the email today that went out this morning that was supposed to go out last night, every time I screw up an email, I feel mortified. Like it's just this really thick, heavy feeling of I've done it wrong. I'm broken. I'm never going to, like, there's all these thoughts that go into it, right? That feeling for me, though, is in my pelvis. It's in my low belly, in my pelvis, and it radiates to my legs, my thighs. Like I can feel it like ache down through my thighs. It is a low, it's not a super high frequency as like urgency is in my chest. It's a lower grade, but it's heavier and it's thicker. And it's this dull ache that is really, again, in my low abdomen, my pelvis, and it radiates into my thighs. Those are feelings, okay? Those are not thoughts. Those are feelings. It's a vibration. Clearly, I'm not going to actually die of mortification, although sometimes I believe I will, of course. I am not going to have anything bad happen to me from the urgency that I feel in my chest, right? Like that's not bad. But these are all things that my brain, they're originating with thoughts in my brain, a prediction in my brain about what's happening in my world and how it's relayed to my body. Those are feelings, okay? They start in your head and your head assigns them to your body. Your brain assigns it to your body, okay? These are feelings. No harm. They can't hurt us. All sorts of things are examples of feelings in our world. We just went through some of them. Urgency is one of the big ones. And usually I will offer when we are not able to stop eating, there's an element of urgency that's occurring in our body that we feel like we need to keep going and find something. We need to find something. And more of the food is going to help us find that thing that we're looking for. There's this urgency that's associated with it. So those are feelings. So again, feelings are of our brain. You can see this brain wheel here, or this brain like circle picture here, and you can see all these little emoji faces by it, right? Sensations are different. Sensations are a neuroanatomy experience. Sensations start, in the nerves, and they travel to the brain where they are interpreted. So you have a peripheral nervous system and you have a central nervous system. If you look at this cartoon, essentially, this schematic drawing of the body, everything that's happening in the yellow out here, that's a peripheral nervous system experience. This red part, that's your central nervous system. Sensations are experiences that you perceive. They're stimuli that you perceive by sensory cells or sensory organs in your peripheral nervous system. whether it be olfactory cells in your nose that you smell with, right? Like you can smell warm bread, you can smell some horrible smell, something toxic or whatever, something rancid or, rotten, you can smell that with your nose. That is a peripheral nervous system sensory organ that is taking information from the external environment and perceiving it, interpreting it with our brain. You can touch something that's warm and you have warm neurons in your fingertips, like that say, this is warm. Those travel from your fingertips to your spinal column, to your central nervous system, and then it goes to the brain where the brain perceives it. That's warm. This is cool. That smells bad. Sometimes we see things like this is light, this is dark. There are, color sensors in our eyes. There are all sorts of nerves that sense things in our eyeballs that then go to our brain, to the back part of our brain, ironically enough, and it gets decoded and our brain interprets that thing that we saw. Okay. When we are having a sensation is something that we are perceiving. It's information about our experience in the world that we are able to interpret. Okay. I would offer that feelings are also information about what's happening in the world, but they are different pieces of information. These are not the same things. Feelings, those vibrations in our body that occurs from a prediction in our brain, they start in our brain, they're assigned to our body. Sensations start in the peripheral nervous system outside of our brain. It starts in a different part, in a part of our body, and then it travels to our brain where we interpret it. Okay. When you think of the difference between like determining when you're hungry and when you're satisfied, like you have to learn to distinguish between the feeling of hunger and the sensation of hunger. And I like to talk about this as brain hunger versus physical hunger. So hunger can be both a feeling, like I feel hungry, starts from our brain, assigned to our stomach as the desire for hunger, right? As I'm preparing for this presentation today, I had things happening yesterday and I wasn't able to put the finishing touches on this presentation. So if you see any typos, please ignore them. Use your phonics to sound out anything I put on here, right? I wasn't able to put the finishing touches on last night, which is what I usually do, sleep on them, come back to it, able to really polish up a presentation. Because of that, I'm having a lot of brain chatter about not being ready. I feel overwhelmed. I feel anxious. I feel all these things. My brain totally was like, hey, girl, you should probably go get food. Like maybe we start our eating window early this morning because I was having this experience, these nerves, right? Like this unpleasant brain experience. That is brain hunger, right? When your brain is like, there's this thing happening and I think maybe food will help, that's brain hunger. Brain hunger is a feeling. It starts in your brain, it's assigned to your body. These, when we're having this, I can't stop once I start eating, it's been a hard day. I'm exhausted. There's a lot still to do. I deserve a treat. We have feelings from those thoughts. Those are thoughts in our brain, and we have feelings that go along with them: overwhelmed, tired, entitled. And we look to eat a lot of times because we produce dopamine. If you remember from other, I think it was actually the last webinar that I did, we talked about how dopamine, we get in these habit loops. We get in, and it's an addiction type reward-based learning is what it ends up being. We start to seek out the dopamine, right? The desire for dopamine becomes the trigger for the behavior that gets the reward, which is dopamine. That marriage of both the dopamine being the reason that we seek it out and the dopamine being the reward that we do the behavior with, that gets us in this addiction type behavior. And that's really what's happening with brain hunger. When you have this thought in your brain that's leading to an unpleasant feeling, this high, exhausted, whether that or irritation, depends on what feeling. Really, this is an individual thing for people, right? Overwhelmed, whatever it is, that feeling, that vibration in your body is that you're like, I don't like this. Your brain will very quickly start to seek out dopamine. And because we know eating will create the dopamine, the trigger becomes the desire for the dopamine. You eat the food and then you get the dopamine and you feel a little better. That's why we have brain hunger. That's where brain hunger comes from. We know that if there's something going on that we are not enjoying, we know we can feel a little bit better if we just eat. Like our brain knows that we'll get dopamine and we'll feel a little bit better. Okay. That is why we have to distinguish what's happening up here in our brain from what's happening inside our body to stop that once we start, I can't stop behavior pattern, that overeating pattern. So what is physical hunger? Physical hunger is, I mean, like you can have the sensation of being hungry, right? You can have the sensation of, I haven't eaten, there's nothing in my stomach, and it's empty, and it's time to eat, right? Like there are sensors inside of our stomach that will sense this and send a message to the brain, and the brain will be like, oh, we haven't eaten, probably time to hunt and gather, right? There is physical hunger, but it starts in your stomach and it's interpreted by your brain. Unlike brain hunger, starting in your brain and getting assigned to your stomach, assigned to your body as hunger, physical hunger starts in your body and travels this central nervous system, the spinal cord, up to the brain, where it is interpreted in the brain as it's time to eat. Okay. That's how physical hunger works. Now, physical hunger is not something that is a full blown, like it's here, hunger's here, let's go. I'm going to die if I don't eat right now. Physical hunger comes in waves. It's just the way the stomach works. Everything kind of comes and goes. It's the way the viscera works for the most part. Peripheral nerves, like so cutaneous nerves on the skin, they definitely are very discreet and they mean something right then. You can step on a tack, you can touch a tack, you can get bit by a dog and you know you need to move your hand right then. There's not usually things that are happening like that inside your body. Even like if there's like an appendicitis or something, there's an actual illness occurring inside your abdomen. Even that pain comes and goes, it ebbs and flows. It is not just a constant. Now, at some point, it will get to that point where it is a constant pain. But all of the things that happen inside of our stomach or on our viscera, that's the inside part of our body, happens in these ebbs and flows. Okay. There's not usually something, unless you get shot by somebody, you know what I mean? That's going to be a constant, instant, we need to do it now experience. If you believe you need to deal with your hunger right this minute or you might die, I will almost 100% tell you that is brain hunger, because physical hunger does not work that way. 10,000 years ago, if we were starving, if we were literally like at a place where we really needed to find food and we were debilitated by the need to find food, we would never find food, because we'd be debilitated by that. That's just not how the body works. There are ebbs and flows. Those ebbs and flows are enough to tell your brain, hey, it's time that we probably need to go hunt and gather, but we're not going to die if we don't hunt and gather in this moment. Okay. If your brain's telling you you're going to die if you don't eat in this moment, that's almost always brain hunger. We live in a time where food is abundant. If we were truly going to be physically harmed by not eating, the food is always available to us. Okay. That's very rarely what's happening to most of us in modern times. So physical hunger comes and goes, and it can be, but it typically starts in the body, and learning how to get into your body and figuring out what that is really important. So how do we learn this? So I'm going to teach you the strategy, which is meditation, that I teach most of my clients for doing this. I do want to talk though, before we start into that process, kind of about what is happening in your body to help you kind of get some ideas. Again, when we are insulin resistant, we are also leptin resistant. We cannot trust the messages that are coming to our body and our brain, because there's that resistance in the hypothalamus in the back of the brain. Like there's cells that pick up the leptin and are supposed to say, oh, we got food, we don't need to eat anymore. those cells are resistant to the message from leptin, just like our muscle cells are resistant to the message from insulin, okay? They don't work appropriately in the presence of those hormones, which means you're never going to hear the message from your body that there's plenty of food and you don't need to eat anymore, okay? So you're going to have some external boundaries, some bouncing off points, some places to kind of work within so that you can determine whether or not it's time to eat or not. Are you believing something in your body, or are you believing a story from your brain? So when you think about eating, recognizing asking yourself early on, like, when was the last time I ate? Like thinking right now, when was the last time I ate something? It takes at least 6 to 8 hours, sometimes up to 12 hours for you to transit your food through your stomach. If you think about going to surgery, your doctor, your surgeon will tell you, we don't want you eating for at least 12 hours prior to surgery. And the reason that is, they want food out of your stomach, because what we do is we sedate you and then we paralyze you and you lose all of your protective reflexes. One of those protective reflexes is your gag reflex, which means the gag reflex is meant to keep things out of your, like from your esophagus, your swallowing tube, the food tube. It's meant to keep stuff from the food tube out of the trachea, the breathing tube, the windpipe. Okay, those are not meant to mix. Those don't go together. So your gag reflex is meant to keep those separate. And when we paralyze you and sedate you, you lose that gag reflex. If you've got something in your stomach, you're not able to protect that airway from the stuff in your stomach. And then that leads to things like aspiration pneumonias. People can get very sick, septic, and die. Bad outcomes are associated with that, which is why the standard of care is to ask you not to eat for 6 to 8 hours, up to 12 hours. And yes, is there evidence that maybe that's longer than it needs to be? Absolutely, there is. But certainly, if you're experiencing hunger, whether it's physical or whether it's brain hunger, if it's been 2 hours since your last meal, it is unlikely physical hunger, because you still have food in your stomach, because it takes the biology of the body 6 to 8 hours to transit food through the stomach, at least 6 to 8 hours. The more protein and fats you're eating, the less carbohydrates and processed foods you're eating. If you're eating more proteins and fats, it takes more time for that to transit through your gut. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, it takes less time, but still at least 6 to 8 hours. Okay. So if that's one of those things that has nothing to do, like, you don't have to distinguish what's happening in your head versus what happens in your body. You don't have to kind of overcome any kind of leptin resistance on the hypothalamic level. You don't have to do any of those things. You have to say, when was the last time I ate? I ate 3 hours ago. It is unlikely that that food has moved through my gut. I can trust in the idea that there is still food in my gut and that I do not have physical hunger at this point. Okay. So that's one of the really helpful things to determine, to help you kind of distinguish between physical hunger and brain hunger. Again, a sensation of hunger in your body, of an empty stomach, versus the brain being like, hey, today's really hard, we should eat, that will make it easier. Brain hunger. I also think it's important to look at the contributors of physical hunger, because this is huge, huge. If you did not get a good night's sleep, you're going to feel more hungry. And you're not going to feel hungry for celery. You're going to feel hungry for M&Ms. You're going to feel hungry for potato chips. So that's a huge contributor to physical hunger. Like, the actual messaging that's happening in your brain is going to, you're going to feel more physically hungry, and you're not going to be hungry for food that's actually food. It's going to be food-like substances. There is this element of ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone. I always think of ghrelin, and people will discuss ghrelin and leptin as opposing hormones. Ghrelin is the one that tells you it's time to eat, and leptin is the one that tells you you're satisfied, you don't need to eat. We develop leptin resistance. We don't really develop ghrelin resistance. But what ghrelin, I always think of ghrelin, it makes your stomach growl. Grr, that's how you know that's the one that makes you hungry, right? Ghrelin is released based on your circadian rhythm, and it can be trained, just like all of our circadian rhythms can be trained. Like, I don't know that you can ever be trained to get as much rest at noon as you do at midnight, but you can certainly train your body to be sleepy at one time versus a different time. Same thing with ghrelin. You can train your body to release the hormone that tells you it's time to eat at a different time. And it just involves postponing or, eating earlier, and then you will start to be hungry earlier because that will stimulate ghrelin release, and then that will start to follow a circadian rhythm. Or you can not eat when ghrelin is released and postpone it and then eat, and then that is going to start to stimulate ghrelin release at that later time. So that's a physical factor that does contribute to physical hunger. Okay, that's something that happens that contributes to our physical hunger. Thirst is another one. If you are thirsty, your body will frequently perceive that as hunger. Okay. So it's good to keep these in mind because these are things that you can do to kind of help you distinguish what's physical hunger, like it's time to eat, versus what's my brain saying, hey, food would make this situation better. Make sure you're rested, get sleep, throw yourself a softball, ladies. Make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. If your stomach starts growling, a lot of times women will be like, I must be hungry. Your stomach will growl even when you will hear that noise. It's borborygmus. Borborygmus is what the science term is, the Latin term for stomach growling. You will hear that noise, the borborygmus, in your stomach even when you have eaten, as your food starts to transit through. You can't always just rely on whether your stomach's growling. Their ghrelin will make your stomach growl, yes, but so will food transiting through your body. So make sure, like, you're recognizing, I usually eat every morning at 10:30 or 11. It's 10:30 or 11. I'm talking to you ladies, so I can't be eating. I'm not eating. I'm choosing not to eat right now. But my brain is going to tell me like there's some hunger there because ghrelin likely has been released in my body because that's what's trained to happen in my body. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Make sure you're getting plenty of sleep, and make sure you're aware of your circadian rhythm and how hunger typically presents to you. Okay. I would offer, even if I ate at 6 a.m. this morning, I would probably still be hungry at this time, even though there would still be food in my stomach because ghrelin would be so powerfully released at this time because it's just when I usually eat. So being aware of those contributors to hunger is important. And then outside of that, the most important thing that you can do is learn to get out of your brain and into your body. This is the most important, effective way of learning to stop eating once you've started. You got to get out of your brain and you got to get into your body. The brain just creates such intensity and urgency that almost leads to chaos when it wants to get that hit of dopamine. Okay. It's just how it works. I think it's a incredibly powerful testament to how strong the brain is, how much of our experience is actually created by our brain because it is such a small part of our body. I mean, look at this picture. Like, this part up here is what we're talking about, creating all of this intensity and urgency and chaos. But we have all of this. This is so much more in volume and size than our brain is. But this part, this brain part, creates so much of our experience. And if what it is creating is, I want dopamine and I want it now, and we need it, and it will get really creative in telling you why it's important that you get the dopamine right this minute. It all happens here. If we can get out of this small part and into the rest of our body, the physical part of our body, we can start to learn what else is going on. Remember, this addiction type, and it's not, again, nobody's stealing from grandma to get M&Ms. Like, it's not this addiction in the way that we see addiction represented negatively in the world, right? In our society. We're not talking about the same thing. The neurochemistry is similar, maybe less intense, but very, very similar. When we realize that we will feel good, we get a dopamine reward after we eat, we start to seek the dopamine reward. That becomes the trigger for the behavior of eating. Having the reward and the trigger be the same thing means that we start to do behaviors even when they don't serve us. That's what leads to this addictive type pathway. Okay. So let's talk about meditation. This is one of the most important practices that you can develop to learn how to get into your physical body and get out of your brain. Okay. A meditation practice does not need to be 2 hours of levitating above the ground in this Zen-like state every day of your life. I've never done that ever in my years of meditation, never ever levitated, and I've never meditated for 2 hours. I think the longest I've ever meditated is 20 minutes, ever. Okay. I have made a practice of doing it every day. Now, even now, I don't do it every day, but there was a year where that was my commitment for a year. I wanted to meditate for at least 10 minutes every day of my life. Okay. And I did. And it was an incredible practice and I learned tons from it. Okay. So when you meditate, the act of meditation gets you out of your brain. The point of meditation is that you stop paying attention to every single thought that goes by in your brain. Like you stop like giving it heed, like you don't give that any attention, like it's there and you can come back to it when you're ready. But right now you're going to focus on your breath and how it feels in your body, right? You breathe. And every meditation practice can have a different thing that you focus on. Like sometimes I've done meditation practices where they're like, focus only on what's in your right hand. There's nothing in your right hand, but that's where you're going to bring your focus back. Thoughts will come and your brain will be like, ooh, shiny, pretty thought. And once you realize, oh, my brain has left me and gone to that thought, I need to bring it back to what's happening in my hand. Then you can start to get into your body through that practice. My brain, when it's time to eat and I don't want to stop and I'm already full and I see my significant other grab a bag of potato chips and my brain goes to, I love potato chips. They're my favorite. Potato chips taste so good. They're salty and oh my God, that would be the best. You know what? I think I'm still hungry. I didn't get everything I needed. I think I deserve some of those. It was a really hard day. Your brain is going to do this. These are the thoughts. This is the chaos that it creates. When you get out of that and get back into your body, actually my body, and I've loved this. Recently, I've seen this so frequently. My body feels so good on the food that I've eaten today. It feels satisfied. It feels whole. It doesn't feel heavy. It feels amazing. That is a practice of getting out of your brain and into your body. When you do that and you stop experiencing and having all the swirling, chaotic thoughts about how much you love potato chips, you start to realize, actually, I'm totally satisfied with what I ate in my planned meal and I don't need any more. This is something that is honed. This is a skill that is developed via meditation. I do not know of another effective way to do this. Meditation is the most effective way I have found to do this. In fact, I don't know any other way to teach this. Okay. There are a number of apps that you can get that will teach you meditation. I think it's very helpful to start with the apps because they guide you through meditation. They teach you how to do it. I have done meditation, unguided meditation. I'm not like some meditation guru. Like I'm not going to retreats and meditating for weekends on end. That's not happening. But I have, like if I went to the YMCA the other day and I went in the sauna and I forgot that my phone loses reception in the sauna. So I couldn't meditate. And that was the plan, that I was going to meditate while I was in the sauna. And I was grateful. I had taken a course last year. It was just an online course about how to meditate, how to do it yourself, like unguided meditation. And I was really grateful for that course because that's what I ended up doing in the sauna was I did an unguided meditation where I did it. But I mean, like I had to learn that. And it was after I had been meditating with apps and a guided meditation for years. I like Calm. I think it's a great investment. I have no affiliation with them. Every so often, they will offer a lifetime membership for half price. I think that at least when I signed up for the lifetime membership at half price, it was $150. So for the rest of my life, Calm app, I've got it available to me as long as they're doing it. I think that at that time, the lifetime membership was like $300. So they do that every so often. It was Christmas one year and a friend just let me know about it. So I was really grateful to that. But they don't do it every single year. At least I haven't seen where they do it every single year. But I like Calm. I think it's I just think it's a good app. It works for me. Headspace is another one that I have used, and I liked it well enough. There were things I did not like about it, which is why I switched to Calm. I don't think one is better than the other. It was really a time thing. Headspace wouldn't give me a minimal guidance 10-minute meditation. Calm would. I don't know, Headspace may now, but like that's why I switched to Calm. So Calm, Insight Timer is another one. Mindfulness and Sleep is another one. There are others. You can just literally go to your app store and put meditation in there and see what comes up for you. Most of them will have a free trial period that you can try out those apps and see if you like them. Most of them also have a number of other things, including like sleep stories is what Calm calls it. So there's sleep stories that they will let you, they're supposed to make you go to sleep, to bore you to death, bore you to sleep essentially. They will have concentration music. They have all sorts of things in those apps, but I think the apps are really, really helpful. So I would start there to learn how to meditate. So ladies, if this is where you know that you need some help in the space of learning how to stop once you start, this is really learning how to have a feeling and not be uncomfortable, so uncomfortable with the feeling that we do an action that works against our health is really at the heart of what I do in my coaching group. Lots of times we have actions and we believe that we need a different strategy so that we can stop doing the action. There is no amount of new strategies, like there's no amount of diet plans or food replacements or, snacking protocols, whatever. There's no amount of that is going to fix the overeating, I can't stop eating once I start eating, because it's caused by something different. The I can't stop eating once I start eating is not caused because you don't know what to eat. It's caused because you have this intense urgency that's associated with these things coming from your brain. Like, oh my God, it's been such a hard day. It's been, so busy. I don't know what to do. I don't want to cook dinner. I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. All of these things. Those thoughts lead to this desire, this feeling, this urgency, this chaos of overeating. It has nothing to do with your food plan. Okay. Women they come to me all the time and they're like, I need to, figure out what to eat. I'm like, what are you eating? They're like, well, yesterday I had a burger and fries. I'm like, why'd you have a burger and fries? Well, we all went out to eat. It was at lunch. Everybody was watching me. I felt so uncomfortable. I just felt like it. I'm like, that's a different problem than I need to know what to eat. Those are not the same things. Setting ourselves a goal, like an expectation, and then figuring out why we don't do the thing we expect ourselves to do, that is what we do at coaching. And if that's something that you're needing to do, if that's something you think will help you, set up a better blood sugars assessment call. If you're not sure, like, is that really what I need? Or do I just need to know how many carbs I'm supposed to eat in a day? Like, that's fine. I will help you with that also. But if you know that like there's something deeper than that, it's not a knowledge base. I know what I should be doing. I have a hard time doing it. Set up one of these calls. We'll figure out what's at the heart of that and figure out how the Delay and Empty program can help you with that. So, okay, there are questions and I hope you're still here. Nisea, I think I'm saying your name correctly, and I apologize if I'm not getting it quite right. So you have a question. Does a pea protein powder during an intermittent fasting stage take you out of fasting? Absolutely. Definitely would. Protein shake has 2 grams of sugar, 27 grams of protein. I started adding the protein powder to my water that I drink during the fasting stage. I would like to know if it's okay and if it's still considered. No, it more than likely, Nisea, it takes you out of that fasting. Partly a few things. Fasting, you break a fast, you stop fasting whenever your insulin level goes up. That's what breaks a fast, at least for fixing insulin resistance. That's what breaks a fast. Having 27 grams of protein, remember with our macronutrients, you will have a minimal insulin response with fat. You will have a moderate insulin response with protein, and you will have a significant insulin response with carbohydrates. Okay. So you're still getting, with 27 grams of protein, you're probably still getting a significant response. So like you're getting enough of an insulin response that it's breaking you from your fast. This is really a great thing to point out, and I'm kind of glad you brought it up because I meant to point it out and it slipped my mind. If we go back to the beginning of this conversation, and we're talking about the overeating component being a problem and how that overeating increases your insulin. If you think about having 2 grams, like say, and not the protein shake example, I want to come back to that because I also think something else is probably breaking the fast there. But if you're eating, just say you're eating hard-boiled eggs and there's less than a gram of protein in a hard-boiled egg. But say this is a totally made up number. Do not run to anybody with this as hard science. It's not. But say you're having a response of insulin of 5 units of insulin from your pancreas with 1 hard-boiled egg. If you can't stop eating that hard-boiled egg, and say you eat 6 of them, well, now you went from having 5 with a single egg to overeating, and now you have 30 units of insulin released with the 6 eggs, with a half dozen eggs, okay? Or, 15 units released with 3 eggs, whatever that is. This is where the increased amount of food, even if it's not processed foods, even if it's healthy foods, this is where that increased amount leads to increasing insulin amounts because there is an insulin response to it. In addition to the protein component, and I say that's released with the 27 gram, or the insulin component that's released with the 27 grams of protein. I know it says that it only has 2 grams of sugar. If you look at the ingredients list, almost always there is some sort of sweetener in that protein shake, in that protein powder. Why? Because it turns out pea protein powder tastes like dump. And nobody's going to buy it unless they make it taste good. And how they make it taste good without adding carbs is they put artificial sweeteners in it. And the artificial sweetener will cause you to release insulin as well. So there's twofold issues that usually happen with protein powders. Lots of women love their protein powders. And I've got a brand. I use Kachava and it's fine. I don't use it a lot. I've had 2 bags and I'm not even halfway through 1 bag, and I've had it since like October or something. So I don't use it a lot. Some women really love this stuff, and that's totally fine. I suspect you really like it because it's got the sweetener in it. It kind of meets the desire for something sweet, and it doesn't feel quite as bad as a shake, like a McDonald's shake. But there is going to be something that's going to break your fast. They will not maintain a fasting state. So if you're going to eat them or drink them, have them with a meal or before a meal or once you've started your eating window. Okay. Because it definitely will impact that. Mimi says it's always been the routine to put the dip out before the dinner. Yeah, we call this pre-dinner. Like in the group, we call this like pre-dinner, early dinner. And it's true. Absolutely. We will put, some dip out, or we'll put like dip and like carrot sticks or veggies. And, it seems like innocent enough. I'm not doing anything like, I'm not eating potato chips. I'm having celery and carrot sticks and a little sour cream and onion dip. And again, it's not about whether that food is right or wrong. It's about like, oh, suddenly now I've got, my belly is actually full with the pre-food, with the appetizers that I just ate. And now the meal that I planned becomes overeating. And then once I get to that feeling of being overfull, which I've had in the past and usually deemed it as being something wrong, right? Again, this is getting into our brain, getting out of our body. Since I've already messed it up, right? Like that leads to this nibbling. I'm not satisfied even though I'm full because I've associated full in my brain with something being wrong. And now I'm going to like keep eating because I'm trying to seek out that satisfaction. All of these things absolutely lead to this whole overconsumption. This it's hard to stop once we start business. There's a lot of chaos that happens in our brain from the food that we eat and from our eating experience. That chaos frequently leads to the process of over consuming, and learning how to get out of this part and into the physical part of our body and into what is really happening. One, there's a wholesomeness that comes with like, oh, I fed my body food that really serves me and it serves my health, and my body feels that. right? The idea of what was this food made of? I think that I've shared this in a couple different of the webinars. There is this like idea of who's making the food for me. Is this food something that was made by somebody who's thought about me and about my biology and what I need? Is there an element of care and thoughtfulness of me and love of me that's gone into this meal? Or was this meal made by somebody who just wants to make a buck off of me without any concern of what I need and what my biology needs, right? Part of that mindset and learning to let that guide what we do and don't eat involves getting out of here in our brain and getting into our body and feeling that wholesomeness. Okay. Feeling that satisfaction, the satiety that's associated with that, the fullness, the wholesomeness that's associated with that. It's hard to do that if we're up here in our brain, because typically there's just a lot of chaos that's happening, urgency, worry, concern, chaos, all of that's happening up here. Get out of that. Get into your physical body, feel what's in your body. I would even recommend doing this even before you eat. Again, like there's so much chatter about when it's eating time and urgency and irritation and worry and excitement and anticipation that's happening in our brain when it's eating time. What most women find, if we can get out of this chaos, even when we're hungry, most of the time when it's eating time and we're hungry, our physical body actually doesn't feel bad. It doesn't hurt. There's no physical pain. There's kind of this svelte lightness that's associated with that hunger component. The only reason it's unpleasant is because our brain's creating all this chaos. So I highly recommend meditation. I think it's an incredibly helpful, effective strategy for learning how to navigate what we physically need and what our brain is creating for us. So I hope that's helpful. One more question. Collagen powder and MCT oil. Is it okay? I get unflavored, put it in my coffee. I feel the MCT. Yes, definitely. The MCT oil probably does give you medium chain triglyceride oils. MCT oils actually are one of the best like brain energy. Like they cross the blood-brain barrier and they do make you feel like you have energy and they make you feel sharp and alert and all sorts of great things. So I believe that, Terry. Yes, I think that as long as your collagen powder is not is not flavored, that it's fine. I think one of the things that we do in the group is if we find that like you're having the collagen powder and the MCT oil and you are doing that and you're 4 weeks into the program and your fasting blood sugars aren't coming down and you seem to be doing all of the other things the way they quote unquote should be done, sometimes we shift that to a meal time. And we do that for 2 weeks and see if with that meal time, you see improvement in those fasting blood sugars, you see your blood sugars dropping into the range you want them. If that's the case, then okay, maybe your body, maybe there's too much protein because there's usually not a protein count on that collagen, although there is protein associated with it. There's something happening that's just too much. And so you have to shift it. Not usually. I would be really surprised with unsweetened or unflavored collagen powder and MCT oil if that was the case. So I hope that answers your question, Terry. It is the top of the hour, so I'm going to sign off. If you do have any questions or if anybody's watching this on the replay on YouTube, make sure you put any questions, any concerns in the comment section. And if you have any other questions, send me a message, Delane@DelaneMD.com. I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you are ready to get started, or you just want to hear if this is the right thing for you, if like the Delane MD program is the right thing for you, make sure you sign up for a better blood sugar assessment call. You can find that at calendly.com/DelaneMD. You can find that link there. You can find it on my Instagram and you can always email me and we'll get something set up. All right, guys, have a great day. I will be back on the 20th.